Welcome to another episode of the Path to Partnership podcast, a podcast where I, Steve Cole, sit down with partners and directors from top professional services firms, as well as industry-leading experts who help guide those firms. Today, my guest falls squarely into that second category. I'm excited to welcome Alistair Marshall, Amazon best-selling author of Grow Your Professional Practice, keynote speaker, and a leading authority on business development in the professional services world. Alistair, thank you for joining me today. I'm looking forward to diving into your insights. Alistair, for the benefit of the listeners, tell me a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Well, I didn't have a background in professional services, Steve, until the JFC.
Wow, okay.
And following the JFC, I went networking, and all I met were lawyers, accountants, and bankers who couldn't tell me why they were better than the next lawyer or accountant or banker. And I thought, these are the people who need assistance. So my background was actually running large sales forces in fast-moving consumer goods. So I had a change of career. And for the last 15 years, I've been helping professional services firms, including a lot of accountants, how to grow a practice. And I'm Spartacus. I failed my accountancy exams in the mid-'80s. I don't go back there. It wasn't a fun time. But I do remember that whilst I was there, no one taught me how to grow a practice. So I have empathy for these people.
Okay.
It's a challenge. Where do you learn this stuff?
And that's, why I wanted to get you on the podcast, because out of these episodes that I've done, a massive area that people need to work on and is so important, and has certainly felt really important in the last 2 to 3 years, is business development. So from your perspective, what is the definition of business development for a professional services person?
How to grow relationships with people who are potential prospects or referrers. The end.
Yeah.
So lots of people call it selling or think it's desperate or cheesy, and that's not why I joined the profession. And I have empathy with that view, but there's nothing to fear here. There really is not. And all clients, professional services, and particularly accounting, is fortunate that every business needs it.
Yeah.
So there's already a demand for the service. They've got to search it and buy it from somebody. So it may as well be you. So it's really only client service multiplied by relationships. And as I say, it's just how it's done. But I have to be honest and say there are similar people with similar qualifications working in similar firms, offering similar services, using similar platforms at similar prices. It's quite hard to be chosen. So rather than say anything about the S word and selling, I'd rather say I make people easier to buy from.
Excellent. Okay, that makes perfect sense. And from an engagement perspective, do firms engage you to talk through their firm strategy on business development, or do individuals engage you to be better at selling?
Well, usually it's firms where
Yeah.
I'm approached by some senior person at a firm, but I do work with some senior individuals at the larger practices who perhaps feel reluctant or anxious about putting their hand up in their current organization to suggest that they need help.
Yep.
And I understand that dynamic because politics is in every firm. But generally people want tactics. So they come to me and they go, Alistair, we need to either make more profit or we need more client work or more profitable client work. And I go, okay, well, that's tactics, but it's usually born out of a strategy. Do you have one? And then people, if they're honest, often lie to me. And they go, yes, we have a strategy, Alistair. And I go, well, let's just scratch the surface of that. So I ask some diagnostic questions, which is actually the first chapter in the book.
Yep.
And that quickly highlights to me that isn't necessarily the case, that they have a working strategy in place. Or if you allow me to make a bit of humor, we've just gone past sort of February, which is a good time for accounting firms to go to the wineries for half a day or a day, write it off against tax and put forward the new plans for the next year. And they blow the dust off last year's, which was said 10%. And then we have to revisit it and go, okay, how well did we do, et cetera, et cetera. So often we start with tactics and then we have to go back in the journey to strategy. And then from strategy, we have to go to diagnostics to work out how we've got to where we are at this point. And I don't always have all the answers per se, but what I've worked out over 15 years is I have a framework of questions that the firm has to find answers to if it's going to be successful, not just in attracting clients, but very pertinent to what you do, how they attract the best human talent in the marketplace.
Yeah.
Because there's a real crossover there between, one of them, for the last 3 or 4 years since COVID, most accounting firms have enjoyed double-digit growth.
Yes.
And often they'll say, well, Asda, we don't need you because we're growing at 10 or 12%. And I go, well, you could be growing at double that if you could attract the right people. And so at conferences and things like that, often I talk about how you use marketing and business development skills to attract the best human talent rather than attract new clients. And there are some huge opportunities for firms that can be easily solved and without investing a lot of cash to make themselves more appealing to candidates.
And so in terms of going back to business development strategy, I think people get quite worried about what business development is. And I think there's this old school mentality of pounding the pavements, cold calling. And because I'm very uncomfortable with that, I'm not very good at it. But so from a business development strategy perspective, what would you say to someone that is a new partner looking to grow their practice? What do they need to do? What are the strategies for them to be successful?
Well, the first thing I would say is that in 2025, no one hires a generalist. They all want an expert. So we live in a world of what I describe as DEB. So who is DEB? DEB is the digitally empowered buyer. And imagine if you were doing, a business valuations exercise, people are going to do the due diligence.
Yeah.
And whether you're a potential new client or a potential new member of staff, you're going to do your research on the business. No one buys anything over $500 without Googling it first. And when you do that exercise, the first two things you see are the website, or if it's an individual, their biography on the website and the LinkedIn profile. So your digital footprint needs to be pretty good. So even if my bank manager's recommended you as my accountant that I should go to, I'm still going to check you out first.
Yeah.
And if you don't look like the expert he's told me you are, then instantly when I come to the engagement meeting, I'm on the back foot. So what I'm trying to do is get people to put their individual intellectual property in a place where I can access it for free before a financial transaction takes place. And there are many ways you can do that. So usually it involves either the spoken word, the written word, or building networks on and offline. And with the advancing technology platforms over the last few years, there's a lot of noise and it's much harder to get found. So you have a double challenge of visibility and credibility. No one's going to hire you or the firm unless they know who you are. The second challenge is once they know who you are, why are they going to choose you rather than someone else? And I spend hours in boardrooms working out what the answer to that is. But there's always an answer. There is always an answer there. But you don't want to be caught in this grey, woolly, nebulous area of the only differentiator is price. And there are too many people, sadly, who fall into that bracket. And if you look at all markets of the world, they're polarizing between top and bottom. So maybe for the car lovers of the world, there's no problem selling Ferraris and Porsches at a certain price in the world. And if you're Tata of India, you can sell lots of entry-level cars into the market. But, here in Australia, Ford and Holden couldn't make any money selling mid-table cars to everybody because it's not a model anybody wants anymore. So they shut it down. My wife works in luxury retail, so she has no problem selling very nice handbags and shoes at extortionate prices.
Do you get a discount?
I do occasionally get a discount. Thank you, Steve, for asking. And Supre and Lowe's have a great market for entry-level clothing. But if you're Myers or David Jones, you really struggle with this generalist be everything to everybody model in the middle. They can't make any money because nobody wants it anymore. And it's no different for accountants. So people either want to be a specialist, or if you've got good technology, you can go in at the bottom end and just pump out a lot of volume at low fees. But you've got to find a way not to just be different, but be better.
And and again, that's a point that comes up a lot on this podcast is that personal brand. What's your definition of personal brand? Because there's a few people that I've spoken to that don't like the term because it should be aligned to the firm, and it should be uh, an authentic brand rather than necessarily just the digital footprint. But how important is personal brand, and when should someone be working on their personal brand?
Well, the answer to that question is daily.
Yeah.
So there's two brands you have to take care of. So you have the umbrella brand of whoever the organization or the firm you're in. But people still buy individual accountants, not just the firms. So I would say it's a 50-50.
Yeah.
So if you're not doing business development for the firm, do it for yourself.
Yeah.
Lots of firms are quite helpful with their staff in terms of, investing in them and the training. Many of them are not.
Okay.
The reason, if you went and asked people why they don't do this, often they get, well, we have a department who does that. That's why we have a marketing and BD department. So they kind of hide behind it. Some of them will say, well, I'm an introvert, so I'm really not good I don't have the skill set. And that's just not true, because I'm 58 and I've worked with some great introverted tax people who wouldn't have thought they were gifted at this. But if you build them a story, stories and numbers sell, Steve. Yeah. And if you give people a story, it gives them the confidence to get out from behind the desks and go and talk to strangers. And good things happen when you do that. But if you talk to the right strangers, targeted, and you have a good message when you get there, you give yourself a huge advantage over those people who don't know how to do it. Yeah. Give yourself an unfair advantage, I would argue, versus the competition.
Yeah. And something that resonated with me in your book was you can't build a great relationship from behind the desk.
No.
And I think there's this perception that, accounting and doing the accounting work is done behind the desk and in an office. How important is networking? How important is that face-to-face networking and getting out there and seeing people? Because obviously COVID made us retract and work from home. But it feels like actually the last 3 or 4 years that face-to-face is more important than ever. And actually people want it.
Well, we talk about the trust word, don't we, in professional services? And there's only so much trust you can build if you have a Teams or a Zoom meeting. It's better than an email or a phone call, but you still, humans interact with each other quite well. I'm still a big believer in having a meal with people and breaking bread with a human. And, if you want to build rapport, that's still a great thing to do. In terms of network, there was an old phrase, I don't know who it came from, who said network equals your net worth. And I'm a big believer in the best network you'll ever have is your own. So lots of accountants go to chambers of commerce and go to events that are run by law firms and all this kind of thing. And I go, well, why don't you start your own based on maybe an industry specialism that you like? And those people who make the effort to do that find themselves hugely more successful than those who don't. So, because you're at the center of all the activity. So, taking it as an example, I'm today having my monthly catch up with the head of professional services at one of the banks, who banks 560 odd professional services firms, the head of professional services for a very large global insurance broker. Right. And we meet every month. It's not by accident. And we don't compete, but we're all got our nose in the same trough.
Yep.
So between us, we probably know 1,000 professional services firms who we can open doors for each other.
Yeah.
All right. So we host events. We do all sorts of things. But if you're a generalist and everyone is your client, who do you build a network with? Okay. So you've got to, no one really wants the generalist. So you need to put your flag in the sand and own some space. And you've got to do some diagnostic work around who is the client, where do you make your money, before you probably make that decision. And it's also very difficult and complex for a full service firm. Now there's a phrase, which the top 20, 30 firms aspire to be, but that's really difficult because again, you're kind of telling people the message that it's a one-stop shop.
Yes.
So it goes against the grain with me a little bit of people want to expertise, and I can get the best tax accountant guy in Sydney. I can get the best M&A specialist person in Perth. They're only 4 hours away. It's not that far. We can do it on a Zoom call. So you have to be careful what you want to become famous for.
So that messaging is really important,
I
both
think
from
so.
a firm perspective and an individual perspective. Because you're right, I think the people do want specialists because that gives them the trust and the comfort. But then firms are saying we can do it all.
Yeah, let me share with you something. The other thing is third-party testimony. And I find that most accountants I speak to are frightened to death of admitting who they've done work for in their career.
Yeah.
And so if you look at most accountants' biographies, they're incredibly dull and they're a history lesson. Okay, so they go, well, I went to this university and then I went to that firm for a few years and then I've been to this firm for a few years and I'm now a partner at this firm and I've been doing partner for 25 years. And I go, yeah, smashing. And that's really exciting. But why am I going to choose you rather than the next person? And there's, as I say, I meet lousy accountants who are my age at 58 and I meet really good accountants who are 38. So longevity is not the reason why you're going to be chosen.
Yeah.
Right? It's what you've achieved in those years. So, what type of work have you done? What type of clients have you done it for? And most importantly, what type of results have you gained for the client? And, people say, oh, well, we can't talk about that. We can't chat. No, you can. And that's what will differentiate you and why people will have the confidence that you're the right person to solve their financial challenges.
And is that because historically the brand and the pull to win work came from the firm, but now it's more about the individual accountant?
Well, interestingly, before we came on air, we were talking about the way that compensation is now paid in some firms versus others, and that I have been on this earth long enough to realize that sometimes humans they can change their behavior based on what rewards they receive.
Yeah.
So if you want to change hearts and minds around business development, making sure you've got the right financial levers in place can make a difference.
Yeah.
So many firms often will say, Alistair, we have a bonus pool or an incentive plan for our staff. And I go, okay, when's the last time you paid out? And you've had a 30% turnover of staff in the last 3 years. Have you reminded the new people what it looks like? How many times have you paid out? And worse than that, whilst people have incentives, they rarely have consequences for non-achievement.
Yep.
Right. So there's Jim. Jim's been here 12 years. He's never hit his number. He hasn't really grown a new client in the last 5 years since COVID, but he's a good lad, Jim. He's always been here. He's solid on tax. So Jim's good. So he never gets challenged. And there's only an elite number of firms who now either look to train that individual to give them the help they need to improve, or look to move them on and think it might be the wrong organization for you. And it's very apparent those that win versus those that lose. As I say, what was interesting in the latest AFR Top 100 list here in Australia was that outside of the top 4, I think there was only 2 firms going backwards.
Yes.
And everyone else was going forwards, right? So there's an element of it breeds complacency because people go, look, it's not that bad. But if you look at, inflation is officially only around 3 or 4%, but we all know it's higher than that.
Yep.
Anyone who's looked at the salary increases they've paid, the increase in rent, energy, all those things, all that extra cost needs paying for, that should be in price increases. And then I go to a firm and I still meet firms, suburban firms particularly, who haven't had a price increase for 2 years because they daren't ask.
Yes.
And I'm like, well, I suspect your costs have gone up in the last, so how are we going to cover it? So, yes, it's a profession, but it's also a business. We're not usually running a charity organization.
Yeah.
So there are levers they can pull, but the good news is if you're an expert, there is an opportunity to charge for it. People will pay for expertise as long as you can demonstrate it. So you can't just tell people you're better. You have to have tangible things in place. And that takes a system, a tool, and a process, and it takes a while to build it. There's no get-rich-quick scheme, which is why I've not come on here and said, there's a silver bullet and I'll make you all rich tomorrow, because it takes a bit of hard work. The good news is that most of the cost is opportunity cost of time. It doesn't cost cash.
Yes.
So I did a research with 150 firms here in Australia and asked them how many hours and how many dollars they invested to win profitable new clients, and they shared with me what they did. And it was quite apparent that 70% of those efforts were sat behind the desk playing with social media or writing articles. But when they closed the deal, they were out from behind the desk, which is why I'm so keen on in putting across to people, you have to make time in your week to get out and build bridges.
Yeah,
And usually I would say to people, it takes a minimum of 100 hours a year to build a practice. You need 2 hours a week.
Okay.
And Mondays and Fridays are not usually the best days to do it. Okay. So Mondays is a chase your tail day as an accountant. Things happen to clients over the weekend and they phone you and email you on a Monday and you're kind of in responsive mode. Friday, trying to find people, Friday afternoon in Australia, good luck with that. So we're left with Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday. So I would encourage people to put 2 hours aside between 12 and 2, either Tuesday, Wednesday or Thursday, book it in and elevate its importance. So when you go to bed the night before, you know you've got 2 hours of to-do time.
Yep.
And tell EAs and secretaries, try not to put client time in that 2 hours. And when people do that, they get more done in 3 months than they've got done in the last 3 years. And then they go, well, what kind of things do I do? And I go, well, you might still write an article in the first hour, but the second hour, you've got time to get out and go and build relationships with either existing clients, prospects, or referrers. And again, people sometimes get overfaced. So I think larger firms, someone from marketing or BD comes along and says, here's a list of 100 businesses on the nearby business park. Go and knock yourself out. Go and see what you can do with that. And people are like, hello, give me some help. So I'm conscious people are busy. So I try and have them in what I call a 5-5-5 program. So you have a list at any one time, a dynamic list. 5 clients that if you spent more time with them, you could win more work.
Yep.
So you either go to them and say, well, you currently only buy tax and whatever offers, but we do 6 or 7 of these other services. It could be wealth management, whatever it is.
Yep.
Talk to them about it. It could well be, well, we only act for you in New South Wales, but we can also act for you in other states. So you could get referrals on a geographic basis. A number of things. Or you just be more of what their current spend is. So that's one way of doing it. Then you've got prospects who match the ideal client.
Yep.
So, people are reliant on referrals. It's quite funny when you go to them and you go, how have you grown this business to date? And they go, referrals, Alistair. And I go, okay, well, we're on the 27th of March. How many clients have you asked a referral for this year? But none. And I go, well, we're going to be waiting a long time to grow this practice, aren't we?
Okay.
And funny, we were talking about management consulting before. Bain & Company actually did some research where they asked 500 managing partners of accounting firms if they thought they were worthy of a referral. And 80% of them said yes. And Bain said, we don't believe you. Give us your top 20 clients. We'll phone them and ask them if that's true. So Bain rang up the top 20 clients of the 500 firms, and only 16% of the clients thought they were worthy of a referral. So the actual gap between perception and reality on whether you're worthy of a referral is enormous.
Yeah.
So the other thing is with referrals, the best trigger moment for a referral is when someone's just scored you 9 or 10 on a net promoter score.
Okay.
But in Australia, the quality of feedback is woeful compared to many other places. So in the UK, where service isn't great, but at least they measure it and they know it's not great.
Okay.
Whereas here, I don't think service is great, and I don't know whether that's because we don't have a tipping culture.
Yep.
But if you don't feel great, just walk into a restaurant or go and stand in David Jones and say if you were made to feel important. I'll tell you what the answer will be. And so, as I say, the clue's in the title. Professional services. How good is the service?
Yeah.
And often it's not great, and I don't think it often improves because people don't measure it. And if you don't measure it, it's hard to make it better.
Yeah.
And that's the best time to ask for a referral.
And so, again, does that come back to people being too reliant on other people around them or even the brand that they work for? Or are they never told to ask for a referral?
Well, again, I have empathy because no one's ever told them how to do it.
Yeah.
So they haven't told them when to do it, how to ask, all of those things.
Yeah.
All of that's in the book.
Yeah,
so there's
of course.
pages of scripts in the book on how to ask for a referral without sounding desperate or cheesy. And I suspect it's one of the most well-read chapters in the book.
Yeah.
For that very purpose.
Yeah. And it certainly crosses over to recruitment. From my perspective, it's brilliant. So obviously, when it comes to building a practice, it takes time, as you've already said. Is there a fine balance with firms allowing the individual to take the time to build a practice? Because at partner level, you're under pressure. You're under pressure to perform. You're under pressure to bring revenue in, hit your revenue target. is there a fine balance with that? And how do you advise firms and the individual? Is there often a difference of
Well, I find it quite strange that some firms come to me and say, Alistair, can you train our next generation?
Yes.
And I go, well, yes, I can. But if you want to make a difference in the numbers in the next 12 to 18 months, we should be doing it with the partners. And the perception is, oh, the partners are okay at this.
Mm.
And I go, are you sure?
Yeah.
Because they won't all be good at it.
No.
And it's unrealistic to expect that. And there, I would say if there's 10 people in a room, 3 are probably quite good and relish it. 3 hate it.
Yes.
And there's 3 or 4 sat in the middle who are undecided. And I call those the water cooler people. So once I've done the training, if they go outside and speak to the positive people, if they speak to a Steve Cole, they'll go, Steve said Alistair was good, so he must be good, so I'm going to give it a try. If they talk to the 3 people who are really negative, that might affect them. And I don't always want to work with the 3 difficult ones, right? So I have a problem with HR directors who phone me up and say, Alistair, we've got 3 people here, they never hit the target, haven't for 10 years. Can you work with them? Right? And I go, well, I can, but at best I'll only make them average, and you'll have an average organization because it's like pushing water uphill.
Yeah, okay.
So I said, let me work with either the 3 rainmakers you've already got,
Yep,
or the 3 of the next gen who you think have potential, because then we'll smash it out the park. And then what happens is, because some people are smashing it out the park, the laggers
yep,
look and go, oh, there must be something in this, because there's
Yeah.
a reason why they're smashing it out the park and I'm not. So maybe I need to get on board. So there is an element of that comes into it for sure. But none of this is actually rocket science. You just need to be disciplined and do the right things in the right order.
Yeah.
But as I say, where do you learn it?
Yeah.
And what I was conscious of doing in the book, there's lots of books available that will tell you what to do, but don't necessarily tell you how to do it.
Yeah.
And my perception of having done the research on what works and what doesn't is that it's not just what you do, but it's how well you do it. So if you write articles, but you just put it on your website, realistically, when's the last time anyone went to a website to read latest news, right? It doesn't happen.
True.
Right? So if you spend an hour writing an article, you need to spend an hour sending the article to people who might be interested in reading what you've got to say. And that's where people fall down. Or people say, Alistair, you told me to speak at a conference and I went and did it, but I didn't win any work. And I go, well, did you do A, B, and C? No, I didn't. I go, well, that's why you didn't win any work.
Yeah, okay.
Right? So it's the level of, how well it's been done that makes the difference between winning and losing. And the world's not fair, right? So if you do it 90% well, you don't get 90% result, you get 0. And if you want me to explain how the world's not fair, I meet really ordinary accountants who drive supercars, and I drive fantastic accountants who have great knowledge who struggle to put the finances together.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not just about being technically gifted at the job.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know how many people online would have got an MBA or aspire to have an MBA. The best place to do it, arguably, is Melbourne Business School with a guy called Mark Ritson. Cost you about 85 grand and 2 or 3 years of your life. So to maximize my benefit to the listeners on this call, I'll condense the learnings of that course into my next statement. Fundamentally, on a 3-year course, you learn that the financials of your accounting practice only depend on 2 things, which is operational competence times marketing, which is essentially how good you are at what you do multiplied by how good you are at what you do. And most accountants are ordinary at that second discipline.
Right.
So I sit in boardrooms and I go, okay, guys, tell me finances out of 10. Right. So we're talking profit per equity partner or director, cash in bank, WIP, all those lovely things. And people usually sit on the fence and say, well, we're kind of 7 out of 10. We're doing okay. We're not bad, but we know we could be better. And I go, okay, score yourself on operational competence. How good are you at delivering accounting services? And they'll, become hairy gorillas, right? We're 9 or 10 out of 10. We're awesome. And I go, okay, well, if that's true, based on this model, how good are you at telling people about how good you are at what you do? It's probably only a 4 or a 5. Yeah. So that's how you're going to turn it into cash, is become more proficient at telling people who would be interested in how good you are at what you do, yet not enough people focus enough hours in the week on it.
Because they're just not comfortable selling themselves or selling their expertise.
No.
Yeah.
No, they don't give it the time it deserves, its importance.
So For someone that's on their path to partnership, on that track to partnership, and they're looking, and invariably that target of winning work and bringing in revenue starts at around the senior manager, client director kind of level. You've got to prove yourself before you get the title. What would be the best piece of advice you'd give to someone? Because, there's a lot to take in terms of what someone can do from a business development perspective. But what are the three things you'd say to somebody to really understand and nail down first?
Sort your digital footprint out.
Yep.
So people undervalue things like LinkedIn profiles. So I think that's a starting point. Network. So even if you're junior, you'll have alumni from university. Yes. Probably. You'll have people who you went to school with. You'll have people on sports teams. You'll have friends, all those kind of things. So start close to home, and then think if you're a junior in an organization, go and meet with juniors in other organizations.
Yeah.
So if you're an accountant, go and meet juniors in law firms. Go and meet juniors in banks. Go and meet juniors in insurance brokers, because they all know they have their noses in the business world just as you do, and you're playing on the same level. So don't feel fearful that you need to reach out to senior partners and directors in these big firms and they won't respond to you. Because there's an element of truth in that. There is an hierarchy in professional services firms.
Yeah.
And that's why we have so many law firms who have, salaried partners.
Yeah.
Because they understand that if you have partner after your name, more people will come and visit you or have a coffee with you than if you didn't. So there's truth in that. So the network thing, and start something. So think what type of work do you enjoy? What type of clients do you enjoy doing it for? Find yourself a stream of work that you think is going to be your go-to. And for example, when I decided that professional services were going to be my thing, I read 2 or 3 books on how to run a professional services firm. Because I had to, when I went and met people who ran them, I had to be able to talk their vocabulary. I had to show a demonstration that I knew something about it. I wasn't a fraud. So what's quite funny, when I go and talk to accountants, for example, I'll say, who's your ideal client? They'll say, high net worth individual. And I go, okay, so we just drive around Double Bay or, until we knock one down or something. What are we going to do? So often I'll get, medical practitioners, Alistair. We'd like to deal with medical practitioners or dentists or veterinary surgeons. And I go, well, are you aware that if you run a dental practice, the biggest investment you have to make is in an X-ray machine, because you can't run a dental practice without one. So if you build a relationship with the X-ray machine salesman, he can open the door to every dental practice in New South Wales. So you think outside the box. Mm. And someone, I haven't written it, but someone will have written a book on how to run a dental practice. Read it. Right. So if some of the people here will be listening are in rural places. So, I've just done a project with a rural practice recently.
Yep.
And, I said to them, do you know the John Deere tractor salesman? And I think they looked at me like I'd got a green head. And I was like, I'm serious, because they'll know every rural and agricultural and viticulture business here. Oh, okay. So you think about who can help you. So the network, I try and build an ecosystem around the perfect client. So I've tried to build relationships with all the service providers to accountancy practices. So I don't build websites, but I've met a man who can.
Okay.
So, I don't write copy, but I know someone who can. So all the things that I get asked for in a boardroom, I've found someone who, in my opinion, is probably as good as anyone in Australia at delivering that service, but doesn't compete with me. It's a good place to go.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe I went on a little longer than you thought, but there's 3 things there, I think.
That's really sound advice, because I always reflect back to an example that one of a previous guest gave, who was a client director in a global mid-tier, and she had a very close connection with a senior associate in a law firm. So they were both of a similar level on their pathway to partnership. And this senior associate of a law firm said, this client's looking for some accounting services. Do you want to meet them? Met them, and got onboarded them as a client, which was fantastic. And they've ended up being $1 million client over time. This individual, who actually is a self-confessed introvert, just nailed down doing a great job and getting out there and really spending time with them. They're now $1 million client. She bills $3 million and a very successful practitioner. But that all came from building her network with people of her age, from uni, from friends, from sport, that type of thing. And it's really great advice. So what about the best 3 things for a partner that's maybe looking to really build their practice? Typically they're flying under the radar at maybe a fee base of 1 to 1.2 mil, but they want to get to 2. They want to get to 2.5. They want to be they want to be a higher performer in the firm that they're in.
Well, usually you have to build relationship. We talked hierarchy.
Yeah.
So if you reach out to prospects or referrers who are senior level C-suite people, and you invite them to a flat white in Castlereagh Street, it doesn't make them feel that important.
Yeah.
If you invite them for dinner at Cafe Sydney next Thursday in a themed event specifically for senior people like that, they'll come. So there's horses for courses, Steve.
Yeah.
And again, humans, we like belonging. Yeah. If we get invited to an event that's themed around people who look just like me, I want to be part of the club. I don't want to be on the outside. And I often run these events with professional firms. I did one 2 weeks ago for a global financial services business. And we, put 20 people in the room. There's no big presentation on the night. There's a rapport build, which allows you to buy one-on-one access in the following weeks to go and talk to them about what you do. So that usually costs, I don't know, I think the budget on that occasion was $300 a head.
Yep.
So you can't buy 3 or 4 hours of access with senior board decision makers on AdWords. You can't do it.
Yeah.
Right? So you have to go and do it in person. But people are not coming for a flat white because it doesn't make them feel important, and it's in the middle of the day and it stops the flow of the working week. And why should I come? Because you're just going to try and sell me some accounting services and I've already got an accountant. I don't need to come.
Yeah.
Right. So if you do a themed event though, around, I don't know, let's pick dental practitioners, right? So if you invite dental practitioners to a themed dental practitioner event, and maybe you have some sort of dental person there who everyone recognizes, who you've got as a client, then they'll come.
Yeah.
And people go, well, don't they fall out with each other because they're all in competition? And the answer is no, because they very rarely actually get that opportunity to sit in a room. Now, obviously, you have Chatham House rules, and what goes on in the room stays in the room.
Of course.
But they love that environment.
Yeah.
And, I've done that for several banks in the past, where we've run it on behalf of banks. We've invited heads of professional services firms in. They don't compete. They sit there. They play nicely with each other.
Yeah.
They bitch about the staff and all the problems that they've got. They actually quite enjoy the occasion. But, if I buy you a flat white, I probably spend half an hour with you of quality time, and the relationship will build skin deep. Yeah. If I sit next to you and give you a steak and give you a bottle of Grange, you're going to have a better relationship with me.
Yeah.
And it's not as expensive as you think.
Yeah. Yeah. Really sound advice. Alistair, thanks so much for your time. How can people read your book and how can people contact you?
Okay, so contact me, website, professionalservicesbd.com.au, LinkedIn, Alistair Marshall, not too difficult. And the book is only available on Amazon,
cool.
Which I'm very happy about, because when I wrote books in the UK years ago, my ego made me print them in hardback. So a pallet of books turned up at the house, and Mrs. Marshall nearly divorced me. And every time I needed to post one out, you had to go and put an expensive postage thing on and go to the post office. Whereas now on Amazon, they've been brilliant, I have to say, because people have been great. They've been taking pictures of books all over the world. People in America take and post it back. Which is hugely rewarded. So Amazon #1 best-selling business book available on Amazon, surprisingly enough.
Perfect. Fantastic. Well, look, thank you, Alistair. You may recall our first meeting, which was 4 or 5 years ago, and I said to you, I'm thinking about doing this podcast and thing, and you were like, that's a really great idea, and it only took me another 3 years to actually get it done. So I appreciate you. I appreciate you actually coming on and being a guest. Thank you, mate. Appreciate it.
Delighted. Good to see you.